You were listening to the Mindshift podcast. My name is Erwin McManus. I'm here with my dad, Erwin McManus. We had one of the darker days that we've experienced this year happen yesterday with the assassination of Charlie Kirk in Utah, and we wanted to come on here and talk through things as best as we could. And I'm glad we were able to be here. I know you were in Dallas yesterday, so thank you for jumping on this pod. And
yeah, this is very much an unexpected episode, and ironically, we're shooting it on 9/11. The marker of one of the most tragic days in our modern American history. And yesterday was an incredibly dark day when the notice of Charlie Kirk's murder came up on my phone. I didn't even know whether it was real or not. And of course, at first, I didn't know whether he had been killed or not, just that he'd been shot. And it feels very surreal. And both you and I felt we should at least have a conversation today, and to help our listeners process this as well. There's so many personal and social and cultural and historic implications to this that this is both very personal. Someone has been killed, someone's life has been taken, a husband and a father, but also a significant cultural and political voice. And you cannot underestimate the impact this will have on our culture.
Me and Austin were shooting some of the Ghost Artifacts collection in my backyard, and we were setting up and kind of dialing that thing in when, maybe it was around 11:30 noon yesterday. It was like middle of the day when he got a ping on X and immediately stops and was like, "Hey man, I think Charlie Kirk just got shot." And then I think we started looking online and looking at Twitter and X and Instagram, TikTok, and trying to find something, because immediately it was just panic, videos of just, the gunshot and panic, and sadly, like, pretty quickly into it, I saw the video of him getting hit by the bullet, and it was just so incredibly devastating and absolutely horrible to watch. I wish I'd never seen it, and that's not something I normally look for. I mean, I think, I immediately texted you, "Hey, there's a Charlie Kirk got shot. Don't look at the video." And texted that to everyone in our family, and I don't know how anyone watches that and is settled afterwards. I don't know anyone who can see that and celebrate or be happy for a loss of life. It's devastating. Followed Charlie for the last 5 years, mostly initially during the first during the COVID era. Maybe I'd heard of him a couple years before, kind of thought he was this annoyingly aggressive instigator on the right, but was still a fan, because I like people who are interesting and intelligent and have a unique voice. And so to watch him grow, he's 31 years old. You're allowed to I think you're allowed to be intense when you're in your 20s and you're figuring things out, and then to kind of watch him grow up and do something really special, building Turning Point, having all of these chapters across college campuses. How many times we've sent clips of him back and forth, where I really have grown to love his perspective for the last few years, especially since COVID, and something that we've talked about, we've disagreed on, we've agreed on, we've definitely had coffees where we've broken down his content and his rhetoric, but watching what happened and what unfolded yesterday was I think a scar on human history. It's just this extreme brokenness in our culture.
Yeah, even in both of our experiences with Charlie Kirk and his early conversations and perspectives, I actually did not like him. And I found him to be acerbic and irritating, obnoxious, arrogant, all these other things, too fundamentalist.
Those are all words you've used to describe me.
Too dogmatic. and so the effect of yesterday emotionally to me wasn't because I was a lifelong fan. Now, I will say I have watched him grow and become far more nuanced and refined in his thinking, and really came to appreciate him as much as he irritated me.
Yeah.
His approach, his style isn't my approach and style.
Yeah.
But I loved the fact that he was willing to stand in open debate. I love the fact that he was fearless and that he was not afraid to let someone else have a platform on his platform, which was to me so unexpected, and it was exciting. Usually people pretend to believe their ideas are better, but they do not want those ideas challenged. They do not want to enter into the arena of ideas, and Charlie was fearless in that, and so ironically, that's what earned my respect. And it wasn't that I agreed with everything he said or how he said it, and frankly, so many of the things he said about his perspectives on churches and pastors and theology, we were on very different pages on a lot of that. Not necessarily in his insights, just in the way he approached it.
I think you're referring to early clips when he called out pastors for not being more political.
Yeah, and so his views were very, very much that, early on, especially, that the church and the political force of Christianity should be inseparable, and that the church really is in many ways a political machine. But I understood that in context too, because for years and years and years, I was a pastor of a black church, and in the black community, being political is just natural. It's just a part of the history of the black church. It just hasn't been history, quote, the white church, and so that was kind of an interesting nuance. Only to say that what I felt yesterday wasn't because I was a diehard, lifelong Charlie Kirk fan. What I felt yesterday and today, and what I want to talk about in some ways today, is not coming from someone who's a diehard fan of an individual, but I am a diehard fan of free speech, of the right to speak your mind, and I actually think we've lost something in the death of Charlie Kirk that we are underestimating. And I just, I know yesterday was heavy for you, and you were with Austin. We worked together, and Austin's a huge fan of Charlie Kirk.
I think I think whether you're a fan or not, there's some level of respect for his voice and the presence he brought. I think it was a very hard day. Yeah, I was very sad. We stopped immediately. We're jumping on phones, and you were traveling, and then it's just wondering, if one person's in this space is unsafe. Our greatest fear is that we are friends with a lot of people who have voices, and if there was a list of people who cause controversy, there's not that many of us that do, and we're not nearly as large as a Charlie Kirk as far as audience size, but we definitely attract a similar type of hate.
Absolutely.
From left and from right. And so I think there is that feeling of whether it's us or Lewis or Rich or Ange from Girls on Bible, it's not even about, it was just this, I think, overbearing fear of are our friends okay? The people that we love okay? There's obviously someone that we weren't as close with, but runs in the same ecosystem environment. And it's when you lose someone like that, whether it was on the left or the right, it's just someone in our community who has a voice, who puts himself out there, who says what he believes, who creates conversation and curates conversations. I think there's fear in that of that's, growing up, it's always been a fear of, you dying on a stage or us dying on stages. And so for that to happen to anyone in the community of just people who put themselves out there, it's a sad day. And I think it was just overbearing in a way, and it kind of took the rest of the day, and I think we were all consumed and locked in on
it was
social
overwhelming
media.
It was what really affected me right away was the first news piece I got that he had been shot. I went online, and in the social media there were floods of comments within minutes, and overwhelmingly, maybe even 100% of all the comments I saw were people celebrating that he'd been shot. People mocking by saying, "Oh, our thoughts or prayers are with you," ha ha ha, laugh out loud. And I was arrested. I was shocked that there was such a flood of hate and vitriol coming at Charlie Kirk, and I thought, this is how toxic and unhealthy this culture is. And I would never celebrate the assassination or the death or the suffering of any human being. I don't care if you're on the right or the left. And this for me was one of the reasons I felt like we have to talk about this. There's something dangerously toxic in our culture. Because if you're listening to this and you had even the slightest sense of pleasure or joy or satisfaction or agreement that he was shot, there's something sick in you. And you need help, because there's something dark in your soul. We should never have as our immediate response to something a celebration. And it wouldn't matter to me if it was someone on the far left or the far right. When someone takes someone's life, it's tragic, it's unacceptable, and it's evil. And that was for me the most immediately disturbing thing, because we didn't know whether he would live. I was hoping he would be okay at that time. And I thought, what has happened in our culture where, and I'm going to say it the way I thought it, the very people who are advocating for gun control are celebrating that someone used a gun to kill someone. And it really bothered me. And I think it's really disturbing.
I would like to go into that, but do you want to do that now, or do you want to wait later into that? I mean, I guess we're here now. So I think, one, the response from the left has been really unique, and there is, to not refer to it as the ominous left, but from individuals who I would know or be more liberal, more left leaning, was really interesting. And the silence is obvious, right? I think a lot of friends checked in on each other yesterday. A lot of people were calling and making sure people are okay. And then I don't think anyone was. And I think it's very obvious to see who tries to politicize that for gun control immediately. And I think the left has a really interesting part to play in this, because they've used very violent rhetoric. You can Google and search and find clips from Newsom, Harris, Biden, I don't know if Obama, but from those four at least, referring, I mean, even Bernie Sanders, like very violent rhetoric. And for a party that is so vehemently against moments like January 6th and the rushing of the Capitol, and the way that the scene, the way that those moments unraveled, it feels very hypocritical. It feels very odd that they're so violent in the rhetoric, so intense, and when moments like this happen, I do find it very odd that it feels like it's always happening to the right. It's always happening to conservatives. It's been Donald Trump, President Trump, getting 2 assassination attempts on him last year in his run for re-election, and then you have this moment happening now, and you have Irina Zarutska from Ukraine in Charlotte, and a man stabs her in the neck, and then you have these House of Representatives in Minnesota, and you have the school shooting, you have the church shooting, and you have even the school shooting yesterday in Colorado that no one's talking about because of the events that happened with Charlie Kirk, and it's like, it just seems like there's so much violence happening, and it just feels a lot of the violence is coming from the left. And not to put blame on either party, it just feels very manipulative and very hypocritical for one party to really charge at gun control, but a lot of the violence is coming from their side. And how do you manage that as on any level as a human? How do you know what to believe? How do you know what to think? I think the thing that hurt was the Matthew Dowd MSNBC situation, where he said horrific. Maybe it was just a supporter who accidentally shot him celebrating. And and he's paying for it now. He got fired first thing in the morning.
But also, he was really attributing blame to Charlie by saying, if you speak hate and or anger or whatever it is, and communicate anger, you should expect that to come back your way. And that language, which, by the way, that is so much of the subversive undercurrent, is this ideology that you need to be careful what you say, or it should come back your way. And as much as I did not at times like how Charlie did things, I actually thought what Charlie Kirk did was exactly what should be done. You should have open forms of communication. You should have that kind of engagement. And honestly, if he had not been as intelligent as he was, as gifted at debate as he was, as able to advocate for his ideologies and beliefs as brilliantly as he did, he wouldn't have been a threat. You simply don't try to silence people who are less gifted or less intelligent or less influential than you. And I think one of the things we need to realize is, yes, Charlie Kirk was silenced, but what someone did was they killed someone who spoke on behalf of millions of people. Charlie Kirk wasn't a singular voice. He spoke for millions and millions of people, young people mostly. And what happened in this moment was a cultural statement of, if you believe what Charlie Kirk believes, and if you have the courage to speak up, your life is in danger. And there is no way to escape the fact that that is the message that was being sent. And that's a very dangerous moment in our culture. I'm not a fan of AOC. I'm definitely not a fan of Mamdani in New York. I definitely disagree with every ideological position that they have, pretty much. And they have the right to speak, to live. Their life should never be threatened. They should not be in danger. And that should be true for the Charlie Kirks of the world and the Ben Shapiros in the world and the J.D. Vances in the world and the Donald Trumps in the world. And if our society isn't healthy enough, if it isn't resilient enough to actually be able to have a battle of ideas, then our culture is so fragile, it will not survive.
I mean, I think you bring up Mamdani and AOC. I mean, Mamdani's never had a real job, and AOC, what does she do other than talk? I think I don't think there's a fear of their lives because people know, and I think people can see through uh, the laziness in their rhetoric. I think you can look at Mamdani and go, all the things he's promising, he can't deliver on any of them.
No.
He's not even in control of those things as mayor of New York City. A 33-year-old should not be the mayor of New York City. And AOC, I guess she's in politics because she can get enough people to vote for her, but her ideas aren't interesting and no one is threatened by them. They're just bad ideas.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think you look at a guy like Charlie Kirk and the assassination of Charlie Kirk, his ideas were threatening to their way of being because they're real. Get married, have kids, develop society, bring health to family, bring health to culture. If you grow the family nucleus and make it healthy, it will build our country. Follow God, believe in something. It's important to disagree and to hear the other people across the aisle. I think there was a lot I didn't like. There was more that I liked than I didn't like, and I think that's what was great about him as a human being. And I'm not going to pretend to be a bigger fan than I was.
Mm-hmm.
But there were so many clips that I'd send to you and go, he's growing. Yeah. Like, do you see the way he's engaging and talking about his faith? And someone who is very much about the progression of the faith, of people knowing about Jesus, I think, and having a really authentic perspective and an authentic relationship with God. And that for me was something that's really important and it's really special. I don't think he was one of those guys early on that was really talking about Jesus before it was politically correct, right? In the middle of the Biden term and the Obama term, how do we move forward with this? Because I feel like moments like this divide us more than unite us. When a voice like Charlie Kirk gets killed in front of thousands of people, and then immediately turned to probably the most talked about story in the world, where are we at as a society? Where do we go from here? What do we do next for young people, for older people? Like I told you the other day, I go, LA's a scary place because I know the mayor doesn't care about us. I know the governor doesn't care about us. Like, where is the governor? Our governor is weak, soft, and evil. Our mayor is just sweet-spirited and useless. but our police aren't backed by our government, so they're limited in what they can do, and you can't defend yourself here. So what do you do in a city where, a state, a country where it feels like we're at odds at any given turn? You can't sit on a bus without having to worry about someone stabbing you from behind.
Yeah.
We live in a weird world.
We do. And I'm older than most of our listeners. So I was alive when MLK Jr. was killed and Robert Kennedy was killed and John Kennedy was killed. And that was my first cultural experience in the United States from El Salvador. And I would put this on the same cultural spectrum as King being killed. These were political activists who did not hold political positions. And so they were cultural voices calling people to a specific expression of what it means to be American. And it was devastating. I know it's hard for people to understand how fragile American society felt in the 60s and how devastating these assassinations were. And this moment is one of those moments, whether we like it or not. Charlie Kirk was more than simply an individual. He carried a cultural identity. And we were just told through his assassination that anyone who sees the world from his perspective is not safe. And I think this is where I don't blame everyone, for moments like this. I don't blame everyone on the right for January 6th, and I don't blame everyone on the left for what happened yesterday. But I will say, this is an important gut check moment. If you cannot see the danger of this assassination on the freedom of our nation and the health of our society, you need a significant check in your soul. You have to be able to see that our culture is degrading, and the fabric that holds our society together is unraveling. And the vitriol that is used to paint pictures of extremes is so dangerous. And yes, January 6th happened, and there were bad agents in that. But we really didn't spend much time talking about all the riots that happened across the nation during the pandemic that were instigated from the left. And what we have done as a society is that we have subtly accused the right of being violent in its perspective or its core, and then excused any violence from the left. And
we also don't keep the left accountable. The BLM was a movement that was manipulated and used to raise money to essentially be embezzled and defrauded by
it wasn't a legitimate movement. And that and this is, psychologically, I felt like, wow, it feels like as a culture we were put in a straitjacket where if you had any positions to the right, in fact, yesterday my brother talked to me, he says, "Erwin, it sounds like you're moving to the right."
Hey, I built a house there, just waiting for you to move in.
And I said, I don't think
call it libertarian.
I don't think I'm moving to the right. I think the whole axis of reality is shifting, and it has shifted so much.
Yeah, that must be what it is. Everything else is changing except from my perspective.
No. And if you were demonizing and trying to silence the left, I would be fighting to protect the left. But actually, in the arena of ideas, I think conservatives are more confident than liberals. I think conservatives believe that if we put conservative and ideas in the same room and debate it out, the conservative will win. And because you do not have to resort to violence when you have the better idea. And if you look historically, I think China probably killed 30 to 40 million people to implement communism as a nation. Socialism cannot be implemented without violence. And And that's something that as a nation, we were going to have to step back and look at more profoundly, because it's communicated as if it's this romantic ideal that doesn't have violent underpinnings, but that isn't accurate. And I think as a society, we're more aware of the danger of far right extremism, but we're not as aware of the danger of far left extremism. And and so inside me, I feel this turmoil. Because first of all, Charlie Kirk was a human being. He was a dad and a father. His wife, who I don't even think is 30 years old yet, is now a widow. His 2 children, because of how young they are, will not have a personal memory of their dad. That's been stolen from them by someone who thought they had the right to kill another human being. And for a political ideology, this is a political assassination. But more than that, to me, it is an ideological assassination. It is a profound cultural statement of, if you believe this, you are not safe. And I think what needs to happen now is we need to reset and establish a cultural foundation of, you're allowed to speak your mind. You're allowed to have a different position than me. You are not evil because you disagree with me. And I'm not evil because I disagree with you. And we need to stop demonizing people.
We had to listen for 12, 16 years of the left trying to get us to believe that gay marriage and your kids being trans is a healthy thing, that it's a normal, biological, healthy thing. We watched an entire political party try to rationalize and back by science the most unscientific, non-biologically correct ideology that turning your kids, having your kids have a sex change, prepubescent sex change, is a healthy thing for our society. Our government was funding the transitioning of children. We had to listen to the left spew evil and false ideology and false, I don't even know what you would call it, putting this evil into law, into our school systems.
And false science.
And just make stuff up. For 12 years, no one killed anyone. Did I'm saying we, but because I don't think you are necessarily fully moved into the conservative household that I've built on Libertarian Street, just so you feel at home. No one killed AOC. No one killed Fauci. No one killed Obama. No one killed Biden.
And that's a good thing.
It's a very good thing. That's the way the world should be. Yeah. You shouldn't have to go and you shouldn't go. There should never be violence. Violence is never the answer, right? I believe that. I truly believe that. But I think to make the point is we've listened to lies and evil for a decade, and no one was being murdered over it.
I just saw the statistic this week that I think 20 years ago, about 1% of young girls, I think like 15 to 25, identified as lesbian or bi, and now it's 1 out of every 3 girls in our society. And I can't remember if it was Brown University, but one of the professors wrote an article, a study on calling this sexual identity shift a social virus, that it is not a genetic phenomenon, it's a social virus, and she, I think, lost her job. We have been in a culture war for decades, and what's, to me, important to this moment is, and you were allowed to speak your mind. If you have far left positions, you're allowed to speak your mind. If you were pro-trans or pro, whatever it may be, LGBTQ,
you're evil, but you can say it.
You're allowed to speak your mind.
Yeah.
And now you have this moment where you realize, oh, if you don't hold these positions, you're actually in danger. And part of the reason I felt like we do need to do this podcast, and we're trying to be, I mean, I certainly want to be a positive contributor to what's going on right now. I don't want to create more animus and more anger and more hatred or more division. But what I am saying is that if you have, wherever you stand politically, wherever you stand culturally, no matter how you felt about Charlie Kirk, you have to know this is a historically evil moment, and it is threatening the freedom and health of this society. And people are going to be afraid,
I mean,
to speak their mind, but I actually think people are going to rise up and be more bold and be more clear about where they stand. His conservative values were American values 25 years ago, and now they're seen as extremist positions that somehow advocate and propagate hate in the world. And just because a person doesn't agree with you doesn't mean that they're advocating hate. They don't agree with your ideas.
it is. We compared. We talked about the assassination being a parallel to Martin Luther King. And I think what Martin Luther King was standing for was incredible, right?
Mm-hmm.
He was standing for equality, like racial equality and integration in society. And we talked about this on the last episode. I think it was behind the paywall on our community, but we talked about, the segregation and kind of this reverse racism or this new kind of racism. But I think Martin Luther King stood for something so pure, something so good. However imperfect his life may or may not have been, I always find it odd that people try to assassinate character after big events like that. But 60 years later, a man has died because his entire base foundation is Jesus, the family system, or building a family, marriage being between a man and a woman, and a political platform going conservative values are healthy. Did you think anyone would be killed for supporting family values and conservative ideology?
No, I think this is what's astonishing about it, is that Charlie Kirk's position is actually a centrist position that has become an extreme position because our society has gone so far to the left. And that is a part of what we have to step back and look at and go, what is going on? How is that person seen as a radical extremist? And rather than the people who think shooting him was a good idea. And that's the moment we're in right now. And we're in a culturally really dangerous and fragile moment. And what you don't want to do is you don't want to be silent about your convictions and beliefs because you're afraid. It's actually a moment where you just need to think intelligently so that you know how to defend your positions, but also hold true to your positions. And believe that the best ideas can win in a free society. See, I think Charlie Kirk might have ended up becoming president of the United States. He was on that kind of path and trajectory.
It felt like it.
Yeah, and imagine a debate between Charlie Kirk and AOC. Imagine a debate between Charlie Kirk and
it wouldn't be a debate. It would be what are you talking about?
What I'm saying is that I actually feel very comfortable with that kind of debate because I go, in the arena of ideas, socialism is going to be absolutely eradicated and destroyed. What socialism has to do is it has to demonize any other position and so that it can actually prevail. Now, I'm not saying that that's why Charlie Kirk was shot. I don't know why he was shot. I don't know the motive. I don't know the thinking of the shooter at all. But what I do know is what Charlie Kirk represented and what his voice was in culture. What I do know is that millions and millions of people have been told in this moment, your position is not acceptable in this society and that you're not safe. And if liberalism really believes in freedom of speech, if progressives really believe in a free society, you need to rise up and protect the right of conservatives to speak. And I don't even understand what happened yesterday when they tried to have a moment of prayer or silence in the House for Charlie Kirk, and Democrats started screaming no and protesting. And I'm like, what has happened to our society to where you can't even just out of respect have a moment of silence? You don't have to pray. If you don't believe in God, don't pray. Just be silent.
Yeah.
A moment of respect. But it's almost as if the war is so intense and there's so much hatred there that you can't even acknowledge that a 31-year-old man has just lost his life,
Yeah.
and that it is a cultural tragedy for our country.
Yeah. It was really sad. I didn't understand that. I saw videos and I wasn't sure if they were real or what was happening. On one.
I watched it in several places to make sure that it was real, because I thought, this has got to be fake news.
Yeah.
This really can't be happening.
Yeah.
And I realized, oh no, it was happening. And that's how sick and broken our government and our society is.
Yeah.
Even with our podcast, it's crazy how many people have on the right, if I ever said anything critical about Trump, would just start attacking me left and right.
Yeah.
And to the point of saying, you should die.
Yeah.
And people on the left coming at you, and sometimes me, when we didn't say something they liked.
Yeah.
And there'd be threats on social media, and even just posting yesterday, just the sadness for Charlie Kirk's death, and people sending me DMs going,
Did you even
unfollowed.
say his name?
I did.
Okay.
And, saying unfollowed, unfollow, or, laugh out loud. And I'm like, I don't want you to follow me. Like, if that's the way you see the world, like we're good. I want people listening to the Mind Shift who are open to an entire universe of ideas, who are open-minded, who want to think more clearly, and whether it's from the right or the left, and every time we disappoint them, that's when you should pay attention more, because if we disagree with you, that elevates your thinking. Charlie Kirk will make liberals better thinkers. You see, so conservatives didn't just lose a voice. Liberals lost a foil that would make them better. Because you cannot get better without intelligent, thoughtful thinkers who disagree with you. And that's what we lost. We lost a voice, whether you agreed or disagreed, that made us ask better questions and fight for better answers. And that is a tragedy.
It is a tragedy. I appreciate you sitting down and having the conversation. Probably some of my words will get edited out of the heated moments. But, I think, when I try to put myself in my friends' shoes who are left-leaning and more liberal, people who've been very distraught that Trump won, and very frustrated when, maybe probably a little bit. I don't know. I don't want to put any bad projection. Like, I think these moments are conflicting for them, and they would really hate Charlie Kirk's perspective, voice, and rhetoric. But I don't know that they're people who want anyone to die. I think they would be people who go like, this is why gun control needs to happen, and they'd be more thoughtful on that side. But it's got to be scary, because you have everything from late night talk TV shows to mainstream news organizations going, bankrupt and falling apart, and people getting fired because the viewership's down, and mainstream media really has been shown to be kind of this puppet of whether it's political organizations or just the big billionaire conglomerates that back them. And I don't know if there's ever been a time where we're more self-aware of the people who are influencing us, that there are evil people in the world like George Soros and the Clintons, and people who have obviously taken money from the government, like the Newsoms and the Clintons and the Nancy's, Nancy Pelosi's. Like, you have these USAIDs, and you have these just thing after thing of thing. You go, at what point does it become rumor? It becomes true. Like, and it's got to be scary, a scary feeling that you're going, my entire party, my entire voice, my entire left-leaning ideology is kind of falling apart to some degree as far as its representation in the world. I think moments like this have got to be confusing to go, like, what do I really feel? I think for me it was just sad because I remember an era where neither one of us liked Charlie Kirk. I would send you his clips and you'd be like, that guy's a jerk. And he did say things in that way.
Yeah.
I remember hearing the thing about like if you were an evangelical pastor who doesn't talk about voting for Trump on Sunday, then you don't deserve to be a pastor. I remember hearing that clip, and you were like, "This guy's a jerk," and I was like, "Yeah, I agree with you." And I also remember him changing the way he communicated with people and sitting there and going, "I'm going to pray for you because you're
Mm-hmm.
struggling with something," and praying for people who were opposite of him and so different, and people who were violent or vehemently against him, and so I'm like, okay, this guy really did adjust the way he approached the world and humans and people that were opposite of him. And I hope that we can all learn from that and just go, you know what? Whether it's no matter what causes the change, that we will all just change and grow
Mm-hmm.
and become a little bit more open to hearing the person across from us.
Yeah.
I don't know that people have that ability anymore. We've lost it. We've lost this human skill.
Yeah. If you aren't capable of hearing another person's position
Yeah.
and having a meaningful conversation or debate with another person's ideologies, you're just not a good thinker. You protect your opinions because you actually don't have convictions. And
What, can I ask a question?
yeah,
Someone said this the other day. I could never be a conservative because I care about people.
you could never be in what?
They said I could never be a conservative because
Oh.
I care about people too much. And my response was, I do too. That's why I switched.
Mm-hmm.
I used to be like you. And I didn't know how to go deeper. There wasn't a conversation for more.
Mm-hmm.
It was more of like a passing comment back and forth.
Yeah.
But how do you deal with that? Because I feel like whether you're conservative or, the liberal or liberal
Mm-hmm.
left, we should all care about people.
Yeah, and I think that's why I rarely put people in a category of evil, and is because I think that it's easy for a progressive person to say, "Oh, I care about people." Conservatives don't, but I know conservatives that really love people and care about people, and they believe conservative ideas make people's lives better. I also believe that progressives care about people and that they believe their ideas will make people's lives better. And I actually think that one of the differences is that a more liberal perspective of humanity is people are weak and they need our help and we need to take care of them.
Mm.
And I think a
Like the marginalized, the minority,
yeah, just that's just who humanity is.
yeah.
I think conservatives have a different perspective of people are strong. What they need is opportunity and take personal responsibility, and their lives will get better. And so I think that both sides care about people, but it's a difference between a permissive parent and maybe a more disciplinary parent who both love their child, but they have a different view of how they can raise their child to be a healthy, mature, responsible adult.
Yeah, one will try to turn their son into a daughter, and the other one trying to turn their son into a man.
Well, there you go.
Yeah. How do we go moving forward as a society with this? If there's a one or two takeaways that you have for people who are just mourning or sad or confused, because I think there's a lot of people on both sides that just hate watching anyone die and die publicly.
I did not want to see the video, and it popped up on my media, and I saw it before I knew what I was watching, and then it just kept repeating. This is a part of our culture's love of violence, and it's really dark.
Mm.
But I think one of the ways we go forward is, even though people said it in mocking thoughts and prayers, I actually think Charlie's family wants your prayers, and I do think that that's a good starting point, whether we take this seriously or not. Prayer matters, prayer works, and prayer is important. And I think we should be praying for Charlie's family above everything else. I also think that we should pray that responsible voices rise up that can stand in the space that Charlie stood, because our society needs voices on the right that are intelligent and maybe at times terrifying because they're so witty smart, quick, smart, intelligent. And the left needs intelligent, thoughtful, provocative speakers. And we need to stop demonizing each other, stop fighting each other, start fighting for the ideas. And that would be my encouragement out of this is, as much pain as there might be in anger and fear, don't use this moment to demonize the left. And every time there is something that happens.
So don't do what I just did for the last 45 minutes.
And on the left, don't demonize the right. Take your idea and their idea and show us that your idea is better. That's where we need to go forward. If your idea is better, it's probably going to prevail. But when your idea isn't better, that's when we become prone to violence.
Okay. Well, thank you for listening to this episode of the Mind Shift Podcast. I'm here with my dad, who I think is probably going to disown me after this episode, but I do genuinely love doing life with you and doing these conversations.
No, I love doing life with you, and I think you do represent millions and millions and millions of people who think and feel the way you do. You just have a more unfiltered way of just saying what you really think and what they really think. And so I think that's why it's important. Even when it makes me uncomfortable, even when I disagree with you, it's still important to be able to have these conversations.
Yeah, I appreciate you having them with me, and we'll have more of them. I think if you're listening to this and our tone's a little bit slower or sad, we're sad. We're both very sad. I think it was hard.
Heavy-hearted.
And I think we would have, we felt like this, and it's just sad. Sad to watch anything of that sort. It just seeps into your soul. And if it doesn't, if that doesn't cause sadness, I'm worried for you and I pray for you.
Yeah. United States of America, this is not who we are. We are better than this.
We have to be, or this is going to be a very scary place.
Yeah.
Okay. And see you guys next week.